Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss the new moon or Amavasya that's happening on 21st of October, 2025. It seems like the theme for this moment is taking care of business. Also, this talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And also, I was going to include, we have kind of an unusual situation or phenomenon with two different visible comets going by, so I'll be discussing that as well. Okay, just a note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. So a few announcements, a little orientation, especially for those who are new to the channel. So I'm offering a level 1 Vedic astrology course this January. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I have a short video posted on it so you can learn more about it. Applications are now available, and the application deadline is November 14th. So if that's interesting to you, be in touch by emailing heartlightastro@yahoo.com. Also, auto dubbing is available on this channel, and they have several new languages, Dutch, Polish, and Korean, in addition to the other languages listed here on the slide. All of my teaching videos are on my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. Also, my channel's all about playlists. So, like this type of video on moon phases is in my Go Chart Transits playlist. But there are others like Bava's houses, which is I've done all of them, and also yoga's planetary combinations, so that that makes it hopefully easier to find different videos on different topics. Also, if you like to study astrology by looking at famous birth charts of people, places, and moments in time, I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2025, where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. The latest videos I posted, in case you missed any, solar eclipse Suryagrahan on 21st of September. In that, I include the birth chart of New Zealand. Then there's a Gauri Yoga or the Shining combination, planetary transits or Gochar for October 2025, and then Ashwini Nakshatra or Lunar Mansion. And if you're new to all this and want to learn Vedic astrology or get more out of talks like this, I've listed what I would consider fundamental learning videos at the bottom of the slide so you can start learning on your own. All right. So let's just take a look. This is a blank chart for this moment in time. Again, new moon Amavasya on 21st October 2025. The time for this chart is set at 7:25 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is New York time. And I just wanted to give, especially students, a chance to look at the blank chart without all my notes and markups and everything like that. All right. Here we go with the markup. So, when I was looking at that chart, I think the first obvious thing that comes, that sort of your eye draws towards, is right at the top, because we have 4 planets at the top here. Okay. That's what creates what we call a pravraja yoga, which indicates a life focus. And it's at the top here in the ascendant, first house, rising sign, also lagna in Sanskrit. Those are all different names for the same thing. So if you're not familiar, this is a North Indian style chart. That's what I use in my work. So to orient you, the top diamond is what we call the, again, ascendant or lagna. And that's an indication of the general physicality and personality of like a person. Okay. Now, to get to the other houses, you count inclusively that top diamond in the middle, with the big circle. So to get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise inclusively. So the second house is going to be that upside down triangle with a little 8 in the bottom corner. So the little numbers in the corners, what those refer to are the constellations of the zodiac. So since we have 7 in the little corner of the top diamond of the, again, the Lagna rising sign, ascendant, 7th constellation of the zodiac is a Libra, or Tula in Sanskrit. So we have a Libra rising chart here, or Tula Lagna. Okay. So, but we have these 4 planets right at the top here. Okay, now this is notable again because it creates this pravraja yoga, which is a life focus yoga. But the other thing is we have a sun and moon here in the Lagna. That creates a Sudarshan, or at least a Sudarshanish type of alignment. The reason why I say Sudarshanish is that, well, actually, it's a Sudarshan. Uh, yeah, I need to correct. It's actually a full Sudarshan. I was just thinking about Venus. I was getting ahead a little bit. So this is a full Sudarshan Lugna here, which means that there's an alignment of physicality, mentality, and also purpose or soul. So when somebody has a Sudarshan Lugna, meaning sun and moon in the Lugna, in the ascendant, this person is very focused, individual. Like they don't, how do you say, like everything's lined up for them, like all systems forward. It's not like the mind is going in one direction, the purpose is going in the other, and the physicality is going in another. Okay. So between the Pravraja yoga and the Sudarshan, I mean, this is a lot of, potential focus and, purpose and alignment. Not a lot of drag, going on for a person who would have a chart like this. Okay, the other thing, which I was starting to get into, is that there's a parivartana yoga, which is an exchange of houses between Venus and Mercury. Okay, because if Venus is in a sign of Mercury and Mercury's in a sign of Venus, so you can essentially swap those. So that means you bring Venus, which is in the 12th house, into the first house, which it owns because Venus owns or rules over Libra, Tula. Okay, so that's going to bring even more power to this chart and or moment in time and or potential person. Okay. The other thing that's nice about the parivartana is it's going to strengthen the first house. It's also going to strengthen the 12th house, which is related to losses and expenditures because Mercury is going to go and protect its own house. The other thing by bringing Venus into the first house is you have Sun at the top here, and Sun is in its debilitation sign in Libra. And Sun we generally want, to be strong because, the Sun is not only the center of our physical universe, but it's the center of astrology because things generally derive power and strength depending on how strong the sun is and the relationship with the sun and how much light they reflect from the sun, that sort of thing. So by bringing Venus into this Lugna here, Sun, again, is debilitating Libra, but when you bring Venus, which rules Libra into that, it's going to create what we call a Nichabanga situation with a Sun, okay? So Nichabanga is a situation where, like, this is one example where if the landlord, which in this case for the sun is Venus, and you bring it into the house, it actually helps lift up the debilitation. Okay, not completely, not 100%, but it does help. Okay. The other thing to note about all these planets in here, okay, is you have Sun and Mars, the two leadership planets. Sun's the president, akin to the president, and Mars is like commander-in-chief of the army. And you have the two mind planets, so Mercury and Moon. Mercury's a logical mind, Moon is the emotional mind. And then when you bring Venus in here, we're going to have the two emotional planets. So Venus and Moon are the two emotional planets. So the other thing is, so you have all the mind and emotional planets here, and you have Mars and Sun, which are, again, Sun is debilitated, although it's going to be Bunga with the Venus coming in there. Sun and Mars is leadership, but it's like kind of mental emotional leadership here. Okay, the other thing is Sun and Mars, since they're both fire planets, this can indicate a lot of transformation, but also potentially anger, irritation, that sort of thing. So luckily, again, Venus is coming back into the Lugna here to smooth things out, especially because Venus is a planet representing diplomacy and social grace and, the finer things of life. So it's going to sort of pad or cushion what's going on here. But you can see that there's struggle, probably irritation, fighting potentially as well. The other thing that's going on here in this Pravraja yoga is that Mars and Mercury, you can see, are in the same degree. That gives what's called a planetary war or graha yuddha between Mars and Mercury. Mars represents actions, Mercury represents words and thoughts, decisions. So you can literally think of this as like a war or struggle between what to think, what to do, how to decide, what to say, and actions. Okay. Again, there's some cushion and padding here, but also struggle as well. So, and then in addition to that, as if that isn't enough, so we've got the Pravraja yoga, we've got the Parivartana yoga, we've got the Sudarshan, we've got the planetary war. And on top of that, again, I mentioned there are two comets that are going to be visible on this day, which is a very rare phenomenon. So apparently for a comet to be close enough to the Earth so that you could see it with the naked eye, that only happens about once or twice every decade. So the fact that we're having two at the same time is notable. Okay. So one of these comets, Comet Lemmon, which is that kind of green splatter star. I didn't know how to depict it. I figured that was good enough. That's actually happening in the middle of all this. Okay. So in terms of comets, and how they're kind of interpreted in Vedic astrology, comets are seen as they're called Dhumaketu. Okay. Ketu is the south node of the moon. And south node of the moon and the north node of the moon, they're considered to be shadow planets or chaya grahas because they're calculations, they don't have mass, but they indicate like strange, unusual, hidden, unexpected type of energy. So basically, comets are seen to be sort of like a subset of Ketu. Now, between Rahu and Ketu, Rahu is kind of a little bit more similar to Saturn, which is about, endurance and structure and that sort of thing. Ketu, though, is more related to Mars, which is kind of an erratic, fiery, temperamental type of planet. So Ketu is even more of a twisted, kind of erratic version of Mars. And so you're going to have that energy, this kind of unusual, strange, potentially separatist energy in the middle of all this. And again, you already have the two fire planets, Mars and Sun. And K2 is also, again, because it's related to Mars, is also sort of a fiery planet. They actually have three different, kind of fire planets here. But again, this fighting that's going on here, this is an unusual kind of fight, or it might be unusual for this person, to fight for some sort of cause or purpose here, but they're clearly putting all of their energy, all of their eggs in the basket here, and the basket is, them, because again, the first house represents self. So that's just one of the comets. The other comet, SWAN. And that's the thing too, is that the Lugna nakshatra, so the nakshatra, if you're not familiar, is a lunar mansion. There are about 27 of them. Every night the moon passes through a different one, so after a month you get a lunar month. Okay. And they all have, again, different energies associated with them. So the Lugna, the rising sign nakshatra, is Swati, which is symbolized by new grown grass blowing in the wind. Okay, so that's related to education, but again, fragile beginnings. The other thing I've seen with people who have strong placements in Swati, they tend to be a very nervous type. Like again, the shaking leaf or shaking grass in the wind. So there might be anger here, but also like nervousness, frustration, because there's some new beginning that's occurring here. Okay, so and the comet Lemmon, which again I'll talk a little bit more. I got a whole slide on that. That's right at the top here. Okay. So the other comets, so Lemmon is literally, what's the constellation called? It's called Botes. Botes. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. But it's in that constellation, which is close to, in between, basically Virgo and Libra. Okay. And it corresponds with the Swati nakshatra. So this comet, one of these comets, Comet Lemmon, is right at the top of this lugna here, meaning that the energy of that comet is going to be pervasive because it sits right at the top of the lugna. You're going to see it, if it was like at least in the software indicated here, you would see it run through all of the amshas or subzodiacs as well. Okay, which is kind of intense, okay, if you think about it. Now, the other comet is SWAN, and SWAN is in part of the sky called Agila, which is translated as eagle. That constellation, which is in the similar placement as Shravana nakshatra. Shravana is in Capricorn constellation or Makara rashi, depending on if you use English or Sanskrit. And Capricorn in this chart is in the fourth house, related to home, related to mother, related to happiness, related to education, related to property, land. Okay, so we've not just got one comet here, but two. Okay, and again, I'll get into those a little bit more. But again, just to give you a general overview of the chart here. So, and again, that's these two comets are gonna bring more of this unusual, hidden, potentially explosive energy as well. Because since these are Dhumaketu comets, usually when you have Ketu and Mars together, that can be like an explosive type of energy. Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, luckily there's some protection here, but again, this is like a leadership that's again, that's why it's I think the theme of the moment is taking care of business, is like trying to reduce some or kind of salvage losses through some long-term difficulties here. Okay. Um, so yeah, let's see. The debilitated sun and the new moon are in Chitra nakshatra. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone. And again, a gemstone represents something that's precious, valuable, but also structure as well. So the sun and moon, again, the soul, purpose, career, and moon, mind. Like there's some focus here on something that's precious. It could literally be something like architecture or some sort of, um, building, or again, a valuable item, especially because you also have Venus coming back in here. Venus is all about the finer things in life, right? So there's something, some new cycle related to precious resources here. And Venus is in a nakshatra called Hasta, which is symbolized by a hand. So again, this is about taking control. Okay, that's something. And Venus is is one of the diplomatic planets. It's a practical advisor. Again, social grace, that sort of thing. So it's trying to, like, again, even though it's fairly aggressive, there's some aggression here and irritation, fighting going on. At least, again, if this is a person, they're trying their best to be diplomatic and be reasonable. Okay. Let's see, what else we have here. And then we have the war, Mars, Mercury war, which I talked about. And Mars and Mercury, I mean, those are in the nakshatra called Vishaka. Vishaka is symbolized by a victory gate, but it's like a victory at all costs. So again, it's like, it looks like, again, if this is a person or a moment in time, there's some attempt to prevent like a full-on blowout war, or, skirmish or argument or something like that. And again, the person, again, if there's a situation, this is representing a particular person. They're doing their best to contain the mess and fallout from this, but again, this is a pretty potentially explosive or hostile situation. Okay. Let's see, the Lugnatia, again, Venus. The other thing about Venus, it's in a negative house. It's in the 12th house of losses, expenditures, also isolated places. It is supported, though, protected a bit because Mercury comes back to its own sign. Venus is debilitated in Virgo. Okay. And again, luckily, because Mercury goes back into Virgo, it kind of creates a bunga for Venus, so it kind of pulls that up. So Venus is kind of a mixed bag, really. But Venus, who's often a very strong Virgo because Mercury's with it. Mercury in Virgo is kind of like Marie Kondo. I always think of her. She's this Japanese woman who is fairly famous about her ideas about hiding places and spaces and things like that. And she has a Mercury in Virgo. But Virgo is all about like healing and organizing in very tangible ways. So it's like, um, even though Venus is debilitated in Virgo, because Venus again is more of an emotional planet, there's something about like sorting out emotions, sorting out self, again, trying to keep clean, keep organized the emotions here, but also probably the practical advice that's coming through here. But because Venus is in the 12th house, this could also mean that there are losses related to relationships, especially related to spouse, especially related and losses through diplomacy, losses of some, precious resources, maybe even finance. And Venus is the lord of, let's see, this is the 8th house of deep psychology. So again, it looks like somebody who, goes off, maybe on their own, is a bit introverted, goes off on their own to kind of sort their thoughts and feelings through. And again, Venus is also the lord of the 7th house. So there's going to be losses here. Both of those, again, in this chart, are related to psychology as well. First house, general psychology, the eighth house, deep psychology. So I was trying to like think through in some sort of positive way, what's the most practical thing to do with this unusual kind of potentially explosive situation involving leadership and the mind, emotions, and I would say the arts as well. Because again, Venus and Moon are the reason why I say arts and creativity. Venus and Moon are the two artistic planets, and they're also like related to aesthetics. So, again, just looking at this sort of chart, because Venus is strong by coming back to its own house, Moon is there, Sun is there in Chitra. This could be somebody who's involved in some sort of uh, like creative craft or endeavor, or like building something with their hands, or architecture, because Venus, Mars, and Mercury together, that's like design. And Venus is the strongest planet in this whole mix. So it's gonna bring this really strong Venusian energy to these other four planets in this pravraja yoga. It's gonna, try to keep together the blowout that's potentially happening between Mars and Mercury. But besides all the very strong creativity here, there's intelligence as well, because there's a Buddha Ditya yoga, that's Sun and Mercury in the same house. And qualified because it's in the first house. And Mercury here is strong, even though it's unstable because it's going through this war with Mars. It has Digbala directional strength. So not only is, like, if this is a person's chart, not only very creative, but also very intelligent. And they have both sort of like the Buddha Ditya yoga is more of like a, kind of math and science sort of intelligence. So, this could be like somebody who can really like put things together in a very technical way, but also have really good design function. So I would say with all this, between the Buddha Ditya yoga, the pravraja yoga, the parivartana yoga, the sudarshan, all this, it's like, and then the Ketu, the Dhumaketu with the comet, this is going to be like some sort of, I would think like unusual, possibly sort of eccentric kind of creative genius. Yeah. Who might be kind of a bit nervous, maybe, yeah. So, yeah, but I would say creative genius is what I get from this kind of chart. Yeah, so what else do we have going on? Maybe I talked about Moses. So, we do also have in here, which is going to help a bit. We have an exalted Jupiter in the 10th house. So Jupiter is another very, it's one of the natural benefics, great natural benefics. So it's exalted here. Jupiter's related to justice, fairness, balance, charity, diplomacy, also spiritual counseling here. It is Sunday. It's in the first degree, so it'll be a little bit unstable, but this very strong Jupiter is going to be helpful because it's aspecting its energy onto this retrograde Saturn that's in the 6th house, which is causing a lot of trouble. Because Saturn is aspecting all the negative houses, and Saturn's retrograde. That line under Saturn means it's retrograde. Saturn is on its own a planet that represents obstacles, delays, anxiety, depression, skepticism, doubt, fear. It's retrograde, which will make it stronger. Uh, and also, it's in a nakshatra called Purva Bhadrapada, which is related to a funeral pyre. So smoke and flames and destruction. And, again, Saturn also represents history, antiquity, structure. So there's, and it's in the 6th house of acute issues. So there's some sort of issue here with something breaking down. The 6th house is also related to enemies, and Saturn can represent property as well. So, again, luckily, you have the 3 benefics aspecting not just Jupiter, but Venus as well, and Jupiter's SWAN, in its own sign in Pisces. So that's going to be helpful. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and then Mercury is also aspecting. So you're going to have the three benefic planets, aspecting Saturn, but Saturn is what Saturn is, and it's in Purva Bhadrapada. But luckily, at least you have these 3 benefics that are temporarily kind of again cushioning or padding the blow that Saturn is bringing to the negative houses here: 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, and 3rd house. The other thing that's notable here is that Jupiter, even though it's a natural benefic planet, in a Libra rising chart, a Tula Lugna, Jupiter is what we call a pure temporal malefic planet. It's the owner of 2 houses, and both of those houses are negative. So here, the 3rd and the 6th house. That means that this Jupiter, even though it's a benefic, it's going to be bringing 3rd house and 6th house energy to the 10th house. So this is again like dealing with kind of like what Venus is doing, is trying to pad and prevent things from completely blowing out. Jupiter's trying to do the same thing. So Venus is doing it for all these planets in the Lugna, and Jupiter's doing it for Saturn. Okay, so you've got, again, the 2 natural benefic planets that are really working hard to contain what could be a really big mess here. And Jupiter will, again, be there for a while until, I think, the beginning, 1st or 2nd week of December. The thing though is that the parivartana between Venus and Mercury is going to be ending by the end of this month. So, but at least for a few more days, we've got this parivartana going on, and then Venus will, move into Libra directly. So there may be a little bit of a gap, but again, Venus should, protect to some degree what's going on in the Lugna here. So again, all these things together, some sort of emotional balance, salvaging, problems from acute issues. Also, a lot of, these are all like relationships here. Sun is, father, Moon is mother, Mars sibling, Mercury's friend, Venus spouse, Jupiter's children. There's a lot of, I would say in here, a lot of relationship issues, because again, this Mars and Sun are not, Sun is definitely not strong, being in a debilitation sign, although it's got this bunga from Venus that's there. But if you look directly across from the 1st house and 7th house, you've got Mars in there, which is going to be SWA in its own sign. Sun is exalted in Aries. So the 2 fire planets are going to be really, really strong. And then you've got Mercury, Moon, and Venus as well. So whatever sort of partnership is involved here, and again, I would assume there's some arguments going before, because you have Mars and Sun, going across the 1-7 axis here, and Mars is in war with Mercury. There's some arguments going on here with actions and words, trying to figure out what to do. The native here is trying to contain this and be reasonable and, diplomatic. I would say the partner, not so much, because again, the 2 strongest planets for the partner in the 7th house is going to be SWA, Mars, and exalted Sun. That's a very aggressive, potentially, energy. Luckily, at least they're SWA, so hopefully that gives sort of the highest version of that. But again, there's so much fire there, 2 fire planets in a movable fire sign. That's just a lot of fire to handle. It'll probably burn. But a much more aggressive type of energy than what we're seeing in the Lugna here. And so it looks like that's part of what's, but essentially it looks like what Venus and Jupiter are trying to do is contain the mess and maybe even like turn this around from, again, blowing out completely. And that's the work to be done. Okay, so a little bit about these comets here. So we've got the first one, Comet Lemmon. I guess they categorize it C 2025 A6. I don't know what that means, but so we have a pretty nice picture of this guy here. And again, comet, Vedic astrology are called Dhumaketu. Dhuma means smoke. There's like smoky Ketus here. And again, the Ketu is a south node of the moon, unusual, hidden, unexpected, erratic type energy. And even like one of the quotes, which I thought was pretty funny, it wasn't written by Vedic astrology. It was just like a astronomer, I believe, like a Western astronomer. But it was like, comets are like cats. They too have tails and tend to do whatever they want. So I was like, well, that sounds very Ketu-like. And I think, if I remember correctly, cats are related to Ketu. So, or one of the potential symbols of Ketu here. Let me actually check on that before I. Okay, so yeah, I just checked on that. So cats are potential symbols of Ketu. So I was like, well, that's pretty perfect. So what would we want to know? From a Vedic astrology perspective. Now, I don't know much about comets, so I'll just say that first, okay? I listed here, apparently, and I read the chapter. I can't say it was particularly helpful for understanding the potential interpretation of these two comets, but I'll list it here for anybody who wants to go in that direction. It's called the Brihat Samhita by Varahamira, chapter 11, okay, which was written in the 6th century. So if you're looking for some Shastra, sacred text, ancient text on Vedic astrology, you can check that out. And it lists a bunch of like different types of comets, which are based on color, also clarity, I would say, and the tails, like how clean and straight the tail is, or if it has multiple tails, that sort of thing. Also, the position in the sky. So, what all these things relate to? Well, they bring different energy. So, the position, like here, it's listed northwestern sky. K2, the comet Lemmon here, is going to have more of an influence over that part of the sky that it touches. Okay. And then apparently, comet Lemmon is a green comet. Now, there was nothing listed in this Brihat Samhita related to the color green. There are other colors like red and, not green. So I don't know exactly what that means. But, again, green generally symbolizes the planet Mercury. Okay, in Vedic astrology. So I was sort of like, maybe. Now, the other thing is that, again, classic Vedic astrology is based on what you can see with your eyes, not like, telescopes and stuff like that, because this is like 5,000-year-old, astrology before all this technology was involved or, developed. So, Comet Lemmon became visible on October 16th, and it will be visible through early November. And I didn't get a specific date, okay? But that's important because for every day that a comet is visible, that means that there's going to be, at least based on this, Shastra, there will be 1 month where the influences of this comet will be felt, okay? So, if we're just talking about October 16th through the end of October, what is that, 15 days? Yeah, 15 days, and then maybe a couple more, or a few more, 15 days, maybe 3? I don't know, I don't know exactly when, but let's say 18 days when this comet is visible. That means for a year and a half, the effects of this comet are going to be felt. And it's going to be closest, and the reason this is also why it kind of popped up for me is that it's going to be closest to the Earth and most visible on October 21st when the new moon is happening, which should also help see it because, again, the moon won't be competing with the light, so you can see the comet more visible if you want to see it. Although I'm guessing, because I wasn't able to, based on this Brihat Samhita, understand the effects of the comet. Most of the effects of comet, frankly, were fairly negative, like famine and drought and wars and even like loss of leaders and that sort of thing. Okay, now sometimes there's a very positive effect, prosperity and happiness and that sort of thing. But I don't know how this is going to, work. It didn't give. I guess what was written in the Brihat Samhita was not helpful in me in understanding specifically these particular comets. Okay, so I don't know exactly what to say about them. However, given that they're K2 like, it's almost like a third. I'm almost seeing this. Um, what is it? This new moon on October 21st. It's almost like a third eclipse because we just had 2 eclipses in September. So this is almost like a unusual extra third eclipse, going on here. And again, eclipses bring strange, unusual, expect the unexpected energy. So that's kind of what's going on here. Now, again, the comet Lemmon is currently in the constellation Bootes, which is in Libra or Tula, and it's in Swati nakshatra. So there's going to be some, strange, unusual things happening with the Swati nakshatra. Again, the new grown grass blowing in the wind. And yeah, I think that's most of it with Comet Lemmon. So I also have some info on the other comet. So let's take a look. So the other comet is SWAN, the 2025 R2. I guess they categorize it. Here's a nice little picture of that one. So, so SWAN is going to be visible for 3 to 4 days, so October 20th through 23rd. So it's not as visible. It's not visible as long as Lemmon. So again, the effects of SWAN, based on Shastra, should be felt for 3 to 4 months, versus again, Lemmon's looks like going to be about a year and a half. Now, Swan is in a different part of the sky. It's in the southwestern sky. It's also a slightly different color. It's like blue, green, or turquoise. So blue, again, we've got green again, so Mercury. Blue, potentially Saturnian, and turquoise is, again, like Ketu. Okay. And the fact that we have two comets, again, this is an unusual situation because usually you only see one visible comet every 10 years, and we have two basically on the same day. So between the green energy of both, mostly green energy of both, and two comets, that's giving me like a really strong Mercury energy. Yeah. And it's also going to be closest, to the Earth on October 21st. I mean, what are the chances? I mean, it's hard to miss, right? It's currently in the Agila, translated as Eagle constellation, which is related to Capricorn or Makara. And it's in the Shravana nakshatra. Shravana is related to education as well, also oral tradition. So the two similarities between the comments of Swati and Shravana are education, oral traditions, and that sort of thing, lineage. Shravana is also like a storyteller, that sort of thing. And Shravana is related to music as well. So, so again, I was, just from basic Vedic astrology, just feeling like there's a lot of mercurial energy here. But again, these two comets will bring unusual energy to both whatever your house is, related to Libra and Capricorn. The Capricorn one again. And the other thing is that it listed in the Brihat Samhita that the effects begin about 3 weeks after the comets pass. So let's assume we use the 21st as the, starting date, more or less. 3 weeks after that is going to be what, 10, like almost mid-November is when the influence is going to be felt. All right, so again, not sorry that was any more helpful, but at least there's a little bit of background so you kind of get at least what the Shastra is saying and some potential effects going on here with these two comets, which is a very strange situation. Okay, so now I was going to go through house by house with more of the markings here, and then I'll go through the sub charts and we'll see what we see. So the Lugna nakshatra here again is Swati, fragile beginnings. The sun and moon are in Chitra. So again, that gemstone energy, structure, and wealth. The day lord is Mars, and the Hora lord is Sun. So again, we're picking up this leadership energy. Mars is the commander-in-chief of the army. Sun is a president. Mars is a, rebellious, innovative, fighting planet. And Sun, again, president or king. So there's something about leadership and probably fighting here, especially because Mars, the fighting planet, is in war. And then the Dasha period, we're picking up more Mars energy, as well as Venus and Saturn. Venus, again, is this diplomacy, so trying to cushion the blow of this potential explosive situation here. And then again, Saturn, I mentioned, is causing a lot of trouble because it's aspecting the other negative houses from a negative house. So, and Saturn represents, history, but Saturn's in the sixth house of enemies. So this could be leading a fight over, old enemies, something like that. Mars, Venus, Saturn, the Dasha period. Oh, I didn't mention Dasha period. So the Dasha period is a planetary period. And that's the planets that are listed here are usually considered to be more influential or active during a Dasha period. So the Dasha period is changing from Mars, Venus, Saturn to Mars, Venus, Mercury on 17th December. So again, Mercury is very important in this chart, protecting it, and also, because it has Digbala directional strength, even though it's unstable because it's in war with Mars. Luckily, Mercury's the logic planet, rational planet, so it's trying to kind of, it's like a very different. It's almost the opposite energy of Mars, which is erratic and rebellious. So it's trying to, again, contain, organize, rationalize, maybe not rationalize, but sort of provide some rationale to whatever fight is going on here. And by the time December 17th rolls around, Mars is going to be combust, so you won't be able to see it because it's so close to the sun. It's also going to be in Mula nakshatra, which is related to, you know, planting seeds and roots, but also destruction. So it's going to be more of a, kind of hidden, the fight is going to be less visible externally because it's combust. Venus is there, so still trying to be diplomatic, and Mercury as well. Venus is going to be in Jyesta nakshatra at that point, which is related to talisman and protection. Mercury, though, December 17th is going to be in Anuradha nakshatra, which is pretty nice because Anuradha is a victory nakshatra. But different from Vishaka, where Mercury and Mars currently are, it's going to be Anuradha is related to victory through creating alliances. And it'll be in Scorpio, which is the second house in this chart related to family, inner circle, assets, and speech. And Mercury represents speech. So it looks like, trying to build alliances through what may be somewhat challenged. Because again, the lord of the second house is this Mars with Ketu and Sun in war. So the second house here is unstable because Mars owns it, although Jupiter's trying to help out a bit because it's aspecting from the 10th house. But this December energy dasha period is going to be about courage and protection and building alliances. Yeah. So the context here, more broader social context. So Diwali is happening on the 21st of October or 20th, depending on where, 21st of October, depending on where you are in the world. And this is a festival honoring the goddess Lakshmi, who's the goddess of prosperity and abundance, not just physical and material, but spiritual as well. It's the festival of light, it's called. It's about prosperity also because it's a new moon and Diwali. There's a lot of like pujas or ceremonies related to honoring ancestors. Okay. And then also related to that is the Govardhan Puja, which is this relates to a form of Vishnu let's see, who was it? Was arguing with who? No, it was Krishna. Krishna, right? I think. Don't quote me on these names. I believe it was the Krishna form of Vishnu, which Vishnu is the deity related to sustenance. Okay. And Krishna was arguing with Indra, the god, So Krishna is considered to be like a superior deity to Indra. Okay. Even though Indra is the, head of the gods, there's like a hierarchy here. Okay. So they're arguing, and Indra is also the god of storms. So they're arguing, and then Indra gets upset, and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to bring, this flood, and I'm going to, devastate this village, and cause a bunch of havoc, and blah 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 blah." So he brings in the storm, and then what Krishna does is he takes a local mountain, and he lifts it up, and then he creates an umbrella to protect the village and the people down below. Okay. So and the thing about Indra here was his argument with Krishna was all about, I think, who was like more powerful or his powers, or he was very ego based. Okay. So this whole Govardhan Puja, the kind of underlying energy of that is like spirit winning over ego. Okay. And then in addition, as I mentioned, we have these unusual comets passing through Lemmon and SWAN. Okay. So the first house we've talked about a lot. So Libra, Tula, rising, Lugna here. Oh, but air sign chart. This is a lot of thoughts going on here. This is an ideal person. Again, a very creative, thoughtful leader. Again, a creative genius type of energy going on here. Sudarshan and Pravraja yoga. So again, a lot of focus on, really the self. It looks like maybe the creative power here is the self, The other thing is like, just occurred to me as I was just checking a couple things. Of the planets here Yeah, I would say Venus is the one that's most closely associated with Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance. Again, materially and spiritual. And then this Mars and Sun, again, especially with a lot of fire energy, people can develop what's, in Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, called deranged pitta, where they kind of lose their spiritual focus or perspective because they're so attached to making things go their way and creating things, in a certain way to support their ego. And the thing is, with this Mars and Sun aspect into Aries, these are going to be super strong, Pitta energies, fire energies here. So actually, this chart, you could even see it as like, Lakshmi coming in here and soothing, protecting some blowout with some very strong partner who's very, potentially aggressive, angry, or, again, egoic. Um, you know, so yeah, the chart kind of fits that as well. So the other thing about Mars is that it's Bhavat Bhavam. So Mars is the lord of the seventh house and it's got 7 houses away. That means there's gonna be like one partner after another, or one business after another. So this might be somebody who's a consultant potentially, because Venus coming back to its own sign in Libra. Libra generally represents a marketplace, so it's gonna and then Venus coming back there and being SWAN in its own house. Already from that at the top is going to give very strong leadership, like business vibes. Yeah, because we're talking about marketplace, and Venus is the worldly advisor and sort of thing. But Jupiter is also very strong because it's exalted, and those are the two advisory planets. So this could be like a consultant, so somebody who like consults with one business after another, potentially. Yeah, and then Mars and Mercury in war, and then we have K2 there because of the comet. So, some unusual fight regarding what to do or say, words versus actions involving assets. Because again, all these planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, so what's 5 out of 9 classic planets, they're all going to bring the energy of the houses they own to the Lugna here, which is what? Second house, seventh house, eighth house, ninth house, 10th house, all the houses except, what is it? 4, 5, wait. Three, no, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6 are not included, but all the other has. So again, there's like all your resources are getting put into this either moment in time or person. Okay. Um, and again, involving assets, loss of leadership, authority, but many paths, many partners here, potentially. But again, looks like some sort of creative genius. The Lugnatia, or ruling planet for the chart, is the debilitated but Bunga Venus and Hasta in the 12th house. And it's gone to a moksha sthana, so a house of freedom. So that's going to be a primary motivation of somebody like this. They're just looking to do their thing. It looks like it doesn't look like this is the sort of person who wants to be in charge. I mean, the person in the 7th house definitely wants to be in charge. Like it's like almost control freak energy, frankly, in the 7th house. So, yeah, so this artistic, creative, diplomatic, strongly diplomatic and, intelligent, creative person is like in some sort of argument with a very strong force, Um, and this did actually remind me, I recently watched on Netflix. You guys, if you watch my videos, I like to watch movies and stuff. There was a new one. Well, actually, it wasn't a movie. It was a limited series called Romantics Anonymous. It was a Japanese limited series. It was based on a French film that was done a few years back. And the basic storyline is that there's this woman who's a creative chocolatier, some genius chocolatier, but she has a social phobia. Um, and so she uh, hides what she does. So she pretends like she's not the one who makes the chocolates, like she just delivers them and stuff like that. But she's the one, okay, who does this. And she gets more and more involved with this chocolate making place, the currently the best one in Japan, based on this, that's in the series. And what happens is that there's some big confectionery corporation who has taken over this place where she starts consulting or helping out, and they want to take the recipes and then make them, instead of super elite chocolates, they want to put them in every grocery store, that sort of thing. And they sort of, one of the guys is very untrustworthy and wants to like basically steal her recipes and all this kind of stuff. But she's like this genius that, even the best chocolatiers can't keep up with. Anyway, this chart really reminded me of that kind of situation. She's this Venus who goes off, in her little, remote place, her kitchen in her apartment. This is a Venus in the 12th house, and the Swati, the nervous energy. But she's a master. I mean, so that's going to be this Mars and Sun, especially, in the 7th house. But the Mars, which is going to give her like a master of her trade type of energy. And also is going to make a very strong entrepreneurial energy because we have Mars SWAN in the 7th house and Sun exalted there. So, but it's also going to give potentially very aggressive at times, but leaders in their own field type of partners. So a lot of them are going to be like best of the best type of partners, which is what happened in the series. All these different people making like yuzu jam and, wine and all these other like high level elite manufacturers of food ingredients and things like that. But it's also going to give you, at times, very aggressive adversaries. So it's going to give you both here. Okay. But also, again, this Jupiter exalted in the 10th house here, you know, uh, which is kind of what happened in the, not to give it all away, but kind of what came through with the, limited series on Netflix. Again, Romantics Anonymous, the Japanese limited series this is a very spiritual energy here, also very emotional. And also, Jupiter represents like an ether. So this could be just a very ethereal type of energy going on here or daily activity, which is kind of, again, this genius chocolatier's vibe. She's, even though she has a social phobia, she has a very deep, astute understanding of people's emotions, probably because she's suffered a lot herself. So anyway, so yeah, maybe something to watch, over the holidays, for those of you who are interested in that kind of stuff. So, but you can see, because Mercury also goes to the 12th house, there's also going to be losses related to mercurial things. So business and friendships and logic and reason, speech maybe too. So it looks like, again, logic and emotion is less, is not really kind of penetrating this armor that's involved with the 7th house here because Mars and Sun are so strong. That's just going to be, again, like almost a deranged pitta type of energy. That's not open to reason or diplomacy. It just wants what it wants. Yeah, so sorting out the self, sorting out the business, because again, it looks like the self is the business here. Protection. And also, it looks like part of the protection here is by being careful because of the SWA, Mercury, and Virgo in the 12th house, and also having like maybe a plan B. Because again, Virgo is a dual Earth energy, so having a plan B is probably a good idea here. So again, we have this Hamsa Yoga, Jupiter exalted in the 10th house, which is Pancha mahapurusha yoga. That's a royalty. That's a power yoga. We have a Chandra Mangala yoga. So these are planetary combinations that give extra effects to the chart. Chandra Mangala yoga, that's property and assets. Mangalic, problem with relationships, which again is not surprising. Buddha Ditya yoga, that's that intelligence combination I mentioned. We also have a Gaja Kesari yoga, which is a networking combination, and solar and lunar yogas, which are not super strong, but they're there. So there's some support, positive support for both the sun and the moon. So all this together, spirituality, property, difficult relationships, intelligence network, support. And then the chidra grahas here. So these are planets of vulnerability. Mercury twice over, Saturn and Venus. So again, Mercury and these are the planets we're running, right? No, Venus, Saturn, Mercury. Yeah. So this again, this is like sticking points here. Mercury is being logical, reasonable, Saturn is like, again, structure. Venus is creativity, diplomacy. So logic, speech, deciding, that's Mercury, business, ending, structure, diplomacy, relationships. Yeah, so it's pretty tough here again. The stuff that's, being highlighted here is the stuff that's actively going on. So it's going to be a tough time for this native, yeah, because they're running all of these chidra grahas. So it's going to be a challenging time. Now the yogi here is Saturn, and the aviyogi and the duplicate yogi are Moon. So there's actually value here, and potential monetary value here in Saturn. So it looks like even though there's difficulties here, there might be value in restructuring things. And then the moon here is aviyogi and duplicate yogi. So it can go either way. It can either, and the moon is kind of not unpredictable, but, it's changeable, right? It's a fast moving planet. So, and sometimes the moon, the imagination, nurturance. So again, like the chocolatier, they probably have a very strong moon because that's related to food. Also very strong Venus because it's related to exotic, refined things such as high-level chocolates. Probably Mars because that's related to cooking, and Sun because of leadership. So again, this chart, this could be that, the genius chocolatier in the series I was watching. Yeah, so it does look like, again, money's on board right now, is one of the things here. Main issues that's being argued or discussed. So the second house here, second house lord is Mars, aspected by a SWA Jupiter, and that's in Punarvasu. So Jupiter's SWA by Tara star, not by constellation, but it's in Punarvasu. It's like going back and forth. And Jupiter's about equilibrium. So this is about, I think, trying to smooth things out, like trying to find balance. And it's also the second house of speech, assets, going back and forth, emotional losses, inner circle. So again, trying to cushion the blow of what Mars is going through because Mars owns the second house. And again, the second house is related to inner circle, family, friends who are like family, assets, speech, that sort of thing. The third house lord is Jupiter. It's aspected by a retrograde Saturn and Purva Bhadrapada. So again, there's probably some destructive physical actions being taken that have a long-term effect. The fourth house lord is Saturn, aspected by Mars where it's exalted, but there's also a debilitated Jupiter's aspect in there as well where it's debilitated. So, and then we've got that, SWAN comet there. So again, explosive energy going on here in the fourth house, which again, home, lineage, mother, education, happiness, property, land. And Mars represents, land and property. So this could be like, and Jupiter can represent law where it's debilitated. So this might be some unusual, potentially questionably legal, shifting or even destruction of land going on here, property. Let's see. And also the comet energy, so unusual behind the scenes because the fourth house here is underground, behind the scenes arguments, legal issues, fights that are not fair, related to these things. The fifth house here, the fifth house lord is Saturn, and Rahu's here in Purva Bhadrapada. So that's another, like, Rahu brings hidden, unexpected, but also ambitious energy, and that's also in this, funeral pyre energy. So this could be like really unusual because if it has advice, this could be really unusual advice that's quite destructive. Maybe even hypocritical because Purva Bhadrapada, one of the symbols for that is a two-headed person. So the advice here is not great because the lord of the fifth house is Saturn. That's retrograde, also in Purva Bhadrapada, in a negative house. I mean, this is not, this is a very unusual situation here. And then the issues here are going to be short and long term because Saturn is in the 6th house of acute issues, but it's aspecting the 8th house of long term issues. So this may be like some unusual advice, like if this is a transit chart instead of a person's chart, this would be like some weird, strange advice being given that's probably shouldn't be followed, is what it's looking like here. One more thing. The other thing about this 5th house here is it's not, the 5th house also relates to children. So, especially with Rahu being in Purva Bhadrapada and the Lord also being in Purva Bhadrapada, probably not a great time related to children. Again, it's a transit chart for Libra rising. So the other houses here, the 6th house here, we have a Sundi. The Lord is a Sundi exalted Jupiter. So Sundi meaning that Jupiter is unstable because it's in the 1st degree of the sign. But it is strong, and it's aspecting its own house, so that should cushion again the blow that Saturn is bringing here, lift it up a bit. And also we have an aspect by Venus and Mercury. So again, we have all these benefics trying to forklift, like it looked like the damage that Saturn's bringing. But again, it looks like it's inevitable. It's Saturn's, it's reconsidering the long-term structures here. Yeah, but also because Mercury is debilitated in Pisces, and this again the 6th house here, enemies and that sort of thing. It looks like whatever enemies, and again it looks like old enemies here are not responsive to logic. So that's not most fun. I would assume for a native like this who's really trying to keep things together and keep things on the up and up. So the 7th house here, 7th house Lord is Mars, aspect its own. It's also aspected by Sun, where it's exalted, Moon, Mercury, Venus. So again, very strong, potentially belligerent, dominating partner here. Partners. High level though. Potentially loss of emotional control with so much fire. Money as well. Let's say. But also potentially courage to take a new path forward. So, because again, you're bringing this victory at all costs into the mix here. And the Lord of the 7th house is this, Mars and Vishaka, in war. So, again, pretty belligerent. So again, it's kind of like the energy might be sort of like to cut your losses, even if it's been like a long-term, business partnership or something like that. And again, because the 7th house is so strong, giving again, third time around, entrepreneur type energy here. 1st house being so strong, and then the 12th house and the 7th house, and potentially also the 9th house as well. So again, a lot of entrepreneur energy here, but also like a pioneering master in their profession. It looks like the 8th house here. The 8th house Lord is Venus. Which is debilitated, and you have aspects of Mars and Saturn. So again, considering restructuring of engineering here, of structures here, and losses through this kind of more formulaic type of thinking, the 9th house here, the Lord is Mercury, which we know is in war with Mars. So an authority at odds, also divided because it's Gemini here, divided ideology, and maybe not sure what to do, at a crossroads. Then the 10th house here, 10th house Lord is Moon, which is again new in Chitra, and you can't see it because it's so close to the Sun, and Jupiter is there exalted. So again, this is taking the high road, spiritual, wisely handling of destructive actions and issues here. Most time, let's see, most time. Yeah, because again, like most of the chart, all this energy is going up to the 1st house of self. So really trying to protect and develop the self, it looks like. And it's also a deeply emotional and philosophical issue because Moon, the Cancer, the constellation here in the 10th house is Cancer, which is about home and about nurturance and emotions, and then Jupiter's there, which is about philosophy and balance. So the only thing though is that Jupiter's a pure temporal malefic, so bringing third and sixth house energy into, you know, dealing with all these, changes and arguments in more of a spiritual manner. The 11th house Lord is Sun, again also in Chitra. And let's see, Ketu's there and Purva Phalguni, so this might be some loss or end to a lovely relationship. The 11th house is clubs, group society, friendships, but also income here. The 11th house is also colleagues potentially and easy money, so there can be losses here. Might be somebody who's potentially risk averse as well. Also potentially excuse me, I think I might sneeze. Sorry. Sorry, I couldn't hold that back. So then looks like a partner who's not giving particularly good advice either, because Katie's there. It looks like neither side is really showing their hand, essentially. But the native, again, looks like has a much stronger path forward, because Mars and Sun are so strong in Aries in 7th house. But if you look at the first house, which is the 7th for the 7th, again, going forward, for the partner, it's less defined. And again, there's still like mental emotional charge on both sides here. The other thing is that, well, potentially with a Venus in the first house, they're parivartana. That would also bring a little bit of a Karkabhavanasha energy to the partners. So that would mean that the partners have problems with the relationships as well, potentially. Yeah, it's a little bit indirect, but there can be some of that as well. And the 12th house Lord is Mercury, an aspect to Sun House Parivartana, and Venus is very debilitated, aspected by Saturn. So again, protecting the self, trying to get things in order, ducks in a line, to cushion the blow, because it looks like there's some sort of, again, explosive event or argument going on here, related to business, related to relationships, and the best path to take forward. So cushioning the blow from the emotional losses and, keeping the self, together here. But again, with this type of chart with Mercury and Venus both being swath through parivartana, that means that, again, they're going to both have very strong logic, but also a very strong heart. So again, bringing this creative genius type energy. Okay, so now if we look at the sub-zodiacs here, so these are Amshas, subdivisional charts, all different names for the same thing. So what these are, they're basically ways of looking at more detail for the main chart, but mostly they're used for timing, and they're usually not analyzed on their own. They're always integrated. Whatever information you get from these, you integrate them with the main chart, native chart. But since they're mostly used for timing, I've listed up here the Dasha period, which currently for this chart is Mars, Venus, Saturn, which is just a Mars, Venus, Mercury on December 17th. So I've circled those planets because those are the ones we're looking at. We want to know like where they are and how they are condition and positioning condition. Yeah. So the charts on this slide are the Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnerships, and the Drake and a D3 for siblings. So the D9 here, all the grahas are well placed. The planets are well placed. So that's, a good starting point. Saturn, though, you can see is on the 5th house of counseling, children, 7th house of spouse, partnerships, the 11th house of income, clubs, group, society, and the 2nd house where it's debilitated with another malefic, natural malefic, in inner circle, family, assets, that sort of thing. So the Saturn that's being run here in the sub period is causing problems, clearly. So difficult advice, relationships, path, income, assets, all that being affected. It is, like the main chart, being cushioned by an exalted Jupiter. So that's nice at least. We do have a SWAN, Mercury with Mars, and then a Digbala moon and Venus here. So again, there's a Saraswati yoga that brings creativity, education, learning. And then we have a very strong Mercury here. So getting the ideas organized, stored, and then also these 4 planets, Mars, Moon, Venus, Mercury, all in the 4th house of property, land, home, lineage, mother, education, happiness, so sorting these things out. The thing though too is that and we'll see this going forward. We're only looking at the first amsha here, but just notice, okay, already in this amsha, it's very similar to what we'll see going forward. Jupiter is strong, it's exalted. Mercury is strong because it's swa. Jupiter kind of cushions the blow of Saturn. But very often we'll also see, and Venus is also strong, not in this particular chart, but we'll see going forward, Venus is strong a lot of the time. And then, but we keep getting this combination of Mercury and Moon, so the 2 mind planets, logical mind and emotional mind, with either Mars or Saturn. Okay, either way. Okay, so Mars, Mercury, Moon, and Saturn, those are like soul enemies of each other. Okay, so again, there's a lot of mental and emotional struggle going on here, and we'll see it over and over and over again. So those are the things to watch, okay, as we go through. And you can count, and I've actually counted them up at the end for you in case you don't want to count for yourself, but just over and over and over again. And we keep getting like Karko-Bhavanasha. That's another, look, we have another Karko-Bhavanasha here, Sun in the 9th house. That's a Karko. So there can be issues with authority and father. And yeah, so I've never seen this many Karko-Bhavanashas in any chart before, so it was like pretty impressive. Let's just put it that way. So, yeah, so this Mars, Venus, Mercury, Moon situation, sorting out deep past, sorting through enemies, challenges. We have creativity there. And we also have, again, 2 Karko-Bhavanashas here, Sun in the 9th house, Moon in the 4th house. So issues with mom and dad, authority and happiness potentially. Because again, it looks like there's some sort of management issue or authority, aggressive authority, trying to squelch the kind of creative fire or freedom of a pretty, special person, I would say, unique and special creative person. Then the Drake entity 3 for siblings. Venus is not well placed. Saturn is on, what is this, 2-8. Saturn is on the 2-8 axis here, so difficulty with talk and thoughts. And then we have an exalted Jupiter aspecting Saturn. So again, Jupiter's kind of protecting Saturn a bit here, taking the edges off that. And then you can see we have a SWA Mercury with Moon and Mars again in the 5th house. So sorting out thoughts, feelings, actions, and advising potentially about that. But with this kind of mindset, this is going to be like a fairly aggressive mindset because Mars is with Moon and Mercury here. And then you've got Saturn and Mars on the 8th house of deep psychology. So again, it looks like, potentially siblings are not quite the creative type that the native is. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So. Okay, then on this slide we have more relationship. So we have the Saptamsha D7 for children and Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents. So first of all, this D7's very challenged because 8 out of 9 planets are negative houses. So, like I was saying about the main chart, is that the 5th house for children is very challenged right now. Again, if we're reading this as a transit chart for Libra rising. And then this is basically confirming it. And even the one planet that's in positive house, Sun, it's got Saturn on it, which are, again, they're soul enemies. So even the Sun, period, would not be super great. And you can see also Jupiter is debilitated. And Jupiter is a planet, Bhavakaraka, or not the Bhavakaraka, but the Grahakaraka for children. So, not looking great here. And then we have Mars, Moon, Mercury together again, and Mars is Karko-Bhavanasha this time. So this will bring a courageous mind, but also trouble with siblings potentially. And this 8 out of 9 planets in negative houses, this is called the Balarishta Yoga, which can indicate trouble with childhood in childhood. So this is going to be like chronic issues with children for the most part. And then Saturn, yeah. So, and then Saturn's aspecting Sun. And then a lot of these planets, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, which are the job period planets, are in houses 3 and 8, which indicate change and endings. And then you have Venus and Jupiter on the 6-12 axis. So, but on the Rahu Ketu, you know, axis again. So this could be unusual, but I would say probably bad advice, and trouble, trouble and losses, going on here. So, yeah, it looks like not great advice related to children here. Then in the second chart, Dwadashamsha D12, parents and grandparents. Well, Venus is not well placed, but it's with the Swaketu. So this could be like unusual losses related to relationships and advice again. Saturn is supported by a SWA Jupiter through aspect. Mercury SWA with Moon, but we have the Saturn on it. So instead of Mars, we have Saturn on it. So those three are enemies of each other. And then so this is still like, but Mercury, at least Mercury's in Virgo, so it's again sorting things out in a practical way, organizing thoughts and feelings and logical advice in very practical ways. So yeah, so kind of a mixed bag here. But also, this is a fairly challenged chart because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets out of 9 are in, negative houses. So we have another Balarishta Yoga here. So again, like I mentioned, there's probably, issues related to family, inner circle, parents, and that sort of thing. So we're seeing it here again. All right, so on this slide, we have charts for career, reputation, and public support and income. So at the top here, Saturn is not well placed. Aspect its own house, the 10th house. So this is like plotting daily work here. So again, I'm not seeing a lot of structure here, but look at this. Venus, Moon, and Jupiter are all SWA, all very strong. So the 2 creativity planets, the 2 advising planets. So again, we keep seeing this like arts, aesthetics, emotional, creative design, and advice, very strong for the individual related to career, which is basically what we saw. Like I said, creative genius, who can actually like not just come up with the ideas, but actually implement them. Because some people, they like draw it out on paper or something like that, but then somebody else actually puts the thing together. This kind of person can do both. And again, we have 2 Karkabhavanashas again. So problems with sun, problems with moon, sun being father authority, moon being usually, mother. So again, trouble with relationships. Then the Ekadamsha D11, public support and income. So what do we have here? Debilitated Saturn, not well placed. And it's aspecting Moon and Mercury. So again, this Moon Mercury with either Saturn or Mars combination. Again, a lot of worries, and Saturn is debilitated here. So it's like a lot of worries, anxiety, which again, we had that K2 in the 11th house. So that could be issues with income. Venus and Mercury both SWA. So that's great. We've got at least some, natural benefics that are very strong. So again, speech, assets, being detailed, intellectual property, unusual, type of things. Because Rahu and Ketu are at the top here, and their dispositor, which is Mercury, is very strong. So again, having this kind of unusual, like that comet, the comet Lemmon that's at the top of the chart, the main chart, this person's going to thrive through ideas and emotions and thoughts, unusual emotions and thoughts. But you can see Saturn's debilitated, Mars is debilitated. So Saturn and Mars, we're talking about like property. We're also talking about like manufacturing and things like that. Like this is somebody who's going to be doing more like bespoke type of creative things, not like just taking idea and then blowing it up, and manufacturing. It's a very individualized type of, small, very, elite type of practice that they have. Yeah, so this debilitated Mars is aspect to Venus, so this can, cause problems to Venus right now. The stability of Venus, which again here is related to assets and art, and but Mars is exalted in 5B, so even though Mars is debilitated in the 11th house of income and groups, it is very strong in the 5th house of counseling. So again, this could be like a leadership advisor. This slide we have Chitra Tamsha D4 for assets and Siddhamsha for D24 for education. So here we have an exalted Venus and Saturn that are not well placed, but they're in the 12th house here. An aspect by exalted Jupiter. So again, cushion losses here created by Saturn. Then we have this exaggerated moon that's Swan, Digbala, and Karkabamanasha with an exalted Jupiter and a Bunga Mars. So this is like leading by intuition. Because Jupiter and Moon, they're so strong. These are the two intuition planets, and Mercury is there along for the ride, and Mars is there debilitated. This is very strong intuition, and this may be like the creative genius here. The Venus is very strong as well. So the two, aesthetic, art, creative planets are exalted Swan, and the two intuition and the advisement here. So you can see how this is like intellectual property more than like physical assets. Their creativity is their asset. Let's see. Sun. What is this? Oh, and this debilitated Sun is aspecting a debilitated. Debilitated Mars is aspecting a debilitated Sun. I mean, that's not great for business partnerships here. So again, this person might generally do better, on their own. Because if they take on business partners, they might be kind of too strong or too aggressive. But physically, it would be very helpful. They're still going to be a leader in their field, even if they kind of do their own thing. But this debilitated Mars aspecting a debilitated Sun, there's going to be very, erratic type of partners. That's almost like that Mars and Sun, like in the native chart, except now the Sun's debilitated and neither one is strong. So, yeah, this could be like almost like partnerships are not assets. It's more like intuitive use of their mind and creativity and feeling as well. Because again, the 4th house is happiness. Like even in that that limited series I was talking about, Romantics Anonymous, the Japanese limited series, like they kept going on and on about how chocolate makes people happy and that's why they do it, and they're trying to and they're like solving people's problems, all these like deep problems that they have with like chocolates, stuff. I was like, wow, that's pretty deep, man. Besides the fact that they're delicious, like there's a lot to it. So then the Siddhamsha here, D24 for education. All the grahas are well placed. Mars and Saturn are in Kendra. So this might be, like, since we're talking about education, like engineering and management. So there's that going on. Venus is debilitated, but it's aspecting its exaltation sign in the 5th house, which is advisement. Jupiter is exalted in the 9th house here, and there's a parivartana between Mercury and Moon. So again, that's going to bring a lot of intuitive, creative energy here. Again, there might be some technical things that were learned, but again, it looks like a lot of this intuition, creativity is really even much stronger, I would say, than the education here. And this Venus exaltant is going to bring diplomacy, creativity, kindness, and grace. So those are things you generally can't teach people. It's kind of and not in like a really authentic way. Some people kind of learn to do things because they think it'll create a certain effect as opposed to being genuine about it. But this is like, again, this is this person's world and wheelhouse. Okay, so I didn't talk too much about health except maybe like anxiety so far, but and mental emotional strain, stress and anxiety is what I was saying. And we're seeing here again in the health amshas. So we have the D6 for acute issues, the D8 for chronic issues, and the D27 for strength and resilience. So look at this. We've got Mars, Moon, and Mercury in the third house in the D6 and the D8. Okay, and then we've got, what do we have here? We have Saturn and Ketu on a debilitated moon in the D27. Already from that, that's going to cause a lot of strain, mental, emotional strain. So, but we'll look at it a little bit more. So, and also, again, more Karka Bhavanashas, Mars twice. The other thing about these health amshas is that you can see Jupiter is not super strong in any of these. So Jupiter's with Saturn, but it's not strong, so it won't be able to pull Jupiter or Saturn up much. And Jupiter is aspecting Saturn in the D8 chart here, but it's not very strong itself. And Jupiter's actually debilitated in the D27. So Jupiter is not helping so much here. Not that we're running Jupiter, but in general, that's going to mean, whenever generally when these planets run, Jupiter is not going to be able to bring its beneficial, energy to health stuff. And you can also see, again, mental, emotional strain. So the D6, Karkabhavanasha Mars with a SWAN Mercury, not well placed. So mental, emotional courage, sorting through issues. Exalted Saturn, Karkabhavanasha Venus. So two Karkabhavanashas here, problem with relationships. There's a parivartana here, so some strength, but again, strength related to physical things, not, animate, objects or, or individuals or beings or anything like that. But advice over deep difficulties, trouble with relationships, and then again, you get this Mars, Mercury, Moon, soul enemy situation going on. Then the D8. SWAN Mars this time, Saturn, Mercury, so a lot of courage, but again, problems with, siblings, not well placed, Karkabhavanasha, Mars and Sun this time, so two again, there's Karkabhavanashas up the wazoo. With this chart, it was kind of wild. I've never seen this like that. Trouble with leadership, siblings, father, that's what that gives. Sun plus debilitated Rahu, Ketu, Sun, and Saturn. Chronic, bizarre issues with authority. That's what we've been talking about the whole time. And also, Bala Rishta Yoga here. We've got 5 planets in negative houses. So difficulty, childhood. Then we have the Bhamsha D27 for strength and resilience. So Mars is with a SWAN Venus. That should help a bit. But, Mars, Venus, and Saturn are not well placed. So again, somebody's really feeling the pain here. Even though Saturn is SWAN and Venus is SWAN, that'll protect generally, but even though things look like they're going to turn out all right, somebody's still feeling the stress and strain of this situation. We have a debilitated moon with Ketu and Saturn. That's emotional struggle right there. Yeah, so physical, some emotional protection through challenge, but definitely feeling it. Okay, so on this slide we've got spirituality and worship, the Panchamsha D5 and the Vimshamsha D20. So in the first chart, all grahas are well placed, but we have another Karkabhavanasha, Venus, problems with relationships. Luckily, it's with a exalted Jupiter. So this is going to bring Jupiter and Venus here in the 7th house. Spiritual relationships, spiritual advisements, path forward. And Jupiter and Venus are aspecting the Lugna here. So, and Jupiter and Venus are in the Kendras. The Kendras are the 4 houses in the middle. So again, a lot of just genuine, native goodness here, which is what I would expect given the chart. But there is a Mars, Saturn, Parivartana exchange of houses. So those 2 malefics, natural malefics, are going to be all over the chart. So there might be a lot of physical barriers or restructuring going on related to inner circle groups. It might be hard for this person, even though they're innately a good person, it might be hard for them to find the right group, that feels right. Because again, they're such an deeply emotional, creative being that something too structured or formal might not work for them, or they might have to, really feel their way and find the right place for them. Kind of like that, again, the genius chocolatier in the movie, like her social phobia was so strong. It was only because the co-workers in this elite chocolate, place were so nice and giving and considerate of each other, like that she was able to kind of step out even a little bit out of her comfort zone and work with them, you know. Um, so I mean, if they had been whatever mean or nasty, I mean, she would have just gone right back to her cave. So, but yeah, I mean, exalted Jupiter, Venus, spiritualized art, advice, diplomacy, business path, what we're seeing here. Then the Vimshamsha D20, Saturn and Mercury not well placed. But look, we have 4 grahas aspecting the lugna here. So Jupiter and Venus. So the 2 advisement, diplomacy planets. We have Venus and Moon, the 2 emotional planets, and we have Mars there as well. So this is somebody who like feels really good. It's a creative vibe, is enthusiastic. Like it has to feel good for them to get involved. If they get like some weird vibe, because again, this is going to be a very sensitive person, because they're an air sign, and also because of the K2 and all the, I mean, actually most of the planets. Yeah, Venus and Moon because they're emotional planets. Moon and Mercury because they're mental planets. Sun, it's debilitated, and again the Swati there. So this is going to be a very sensitive person who needs to feel really comfortable where they are to participate. It looks like. Yeah, and this is going to be an essential um, chart as well because 4 planets aspecting the lugna. That means it's an important chart. So it looks like during certain seasons, especially when these, like the Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Moon are running, then this person might be more apt to join a more formal group. His Sun is also pretty good there. I mean, Sun is SWA, Rahu as well. We're not running, Sun and Rahu, but I would imagine, let's see, so Venus and then Sun, because they're running Mars, right? So Mars, and then after Mars comes Rahu, and yeah, so at least during certain runs, because it's the dasha period sequence is Venus and Sun, and then after Sun is Moon, and after Moon is Mars, and after Mars is Rahu, and after Rahu is Jupiter. So for certain stretches of their time, they could, and they will. Looks like they might find a place that really feels good to them. It feels like an emotional home because again, Venus is going to be Swa through parivartana. Moon is going to be Swa. So yeah, it looks like as long as it feels comfortable to them, formal worship would work pretty well. But then I did my count here at the end here. So Jupiter is Swa exalted in 8 out of 14 charts. Venus is Swa exalted in 7 out of 14 charts. I mean, this is like really strong. This does not happen often. Mercury is Swa exalted in 7 out of 14 charts. So again, these are the 3, great benefics. So positive influences, goodness, virtue is what these, planets are going to bring. Then the Karkobhavanashas, though, were like off the chart, like 4 Karkobhavanashas for Sun, 3 for Moon, 3 for Mars, 4 for Venus. I mean, that's a lot of trouble with relationships, which is odd, in a way odd, because this is somebody who um, is a very emotional and creative and intuitive type of person. But again, I think it's the sensitivity here and the anxiety that's getting in the way. And then again, the Mercury and Moon with either Mars or Saturn, 13 out of 14 charts. I mean, that's a lot of mental emotional disturbance going on. So, yeah. Yeah. So just reiterating basically what the main chart was showing, but in a very deep way. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks so much for stopping by and listening to one of my talks. Again, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my consults playlist. They can be found there. For famous birth charts, look at my birth charts archive list 2025 video for a list of all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel. And again, thanks so much for all of your support of my work and my channel. Everybody's like liking and subscribing and sharing and sending in donations, yeah, and we also get some, repartee going back and forth. Sometimes some banter going back and forth, which is kind of fun. So that's appreciated as well. Um, and I do offer individual birth chart readings. If that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com. And then if you want an application or info on my astrology classes, because I have that level 1 intro class coming up in January, and the deadline for applications November 14th, so that's around the corner. You can also email me about that. And I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga. So other Vedic arts, as well as homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. All right, so as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so take good care. Namaste.